Well, juvenescence is a description of the new and fast expanding science of longevity. For the first time in human history, people are going to be able to live ultra long lives. Now, we know that some people have lived to 110 and one person's lived to 122 in properly recorded history, but most people don't expect to live much beyond 85. That perception is about to be upended. People are going to be living as a matter of routine to 100, 110 or 120. Sometime within the next 20 years, you will have the life expectancy rising to those levels across the developed world and ultimately in the developing world. And that, of course, will change everything. So juvenescence is a word that encapsulates that science which is going to lead to those ultra long lives. Well, there are treatments already available which are not widely used but are going to become widely used, which can add to life expectancy almost immediately. Secondly, the diseases of aging, such as cardiovascular disease and cancer, are fast being conquered by medical science. So cancer in 10 to 15 years' time will be either curable or become a chronic disease. It will rarely be a death sentence, and that's a fact. And secondly, cardiovascular disease, which only 30 or 40 years ago was the primary way in which people died on the planet. It still is the primary way in which people die on the planet, but it's going down in terms of its death rate by 2 to 4% per annum. And then you've got all these new treatments which are in development as well, such as gene therapy or stem cells, which are going to have a very big effect on longevity. Well, gene therapy, you may have read, or some people will have read about CRISPR, which is the new form of gene editing that was developed only in 2012 and is now coming into commercial usage. And that will allow, for instance, scientists to edit out bad genes that might cause diseases such as cystic fibrosis, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, sickle cell anemia as examples, but will also allow genes to be repaired as we get older, because the failure of our genes as we get older and the repair mechanisms of those is one of contributory factors to death. And that is going to come into being in the next 10 to 20 years. So that's one thing. Secondly, stem cells, which you're aware of, are our progenitor cells, have been known to have a positive effect on some things for some time, but they haven't been, it's been very difficult to administer them properly. That's now changing. And for instance, heart attack victims will, as a matter of routine, shortly be treated with stem cells and be able to recover much faster from heart attacks. And indeed, heart attacks will no longer be the death sentence that they once were. I didn't say we were going to live to 150. I said that we are, as a matter of course, going to live to 110 to 120. It is possible that someone is alive today who's going to live to 150. In fact, I think it's very likely. But let's just say that the rest of us are going to live to 110 or 120. There are three elements to the planning. One is you need to plan your finances, because most people think they're going to die at 85. If you live to 120, that's another 35 years of life. So you've got to have enough money to sustain yourself, which is in part why we've written this book with investments that will take you through that period. The second thing is that you're going to have a lot more time. It's like waking up in the morning, and instead of having 24 hours, you'll have 36 hours in which to conduct your affairs. And that means that you're going to have to fill that time. You can't be working all the time, and indeed you'll probably be working less. So leisure activities, hobbies, education will become much more important in that world of ultra long lives. And the third thing is that family life will take on a different dimension. Women will have children later because fertility is going to be altered so that they can have children later in life. And family choices will be much more different to the way in which they're conducted today. The book took a lot of research. This is by far the hardest one because this is not an established science. It's a science in flux and in development, and even the scientists themselves don't agree on the basic core premises. So we researched this book by driving around the US for months on end, visiting all the key opinion leaders, and we have visited almost all of them, and also the ones in Europe. Put all the thoughts together, had the book scientifically reviewed multiple times, and we've come to a conclusion that indeed people will be living these ultra long lives based on science. So the scientific part of the book, which is the first part of it, is by necessity quite dense, but it's worth people reading because this is what's going to affect every single one of us on the planet. The second part is the investment part, where to invest, both to make money from this science, but also to sustain you in this very long life. And the third part is a statement about what you should do to be conditioned so that you can live the next 10, 20, 30 years to take advantage of these therapies. And some of that is fairly obvious, but it's useful to have it distilled in one compendium. So we've written a primer about longevity for really everyone, lay people, investors, and people who've got relatives perhaps who could do with some advice, basically.